I still remember the moment the room went silent. It wasn't the soft kind of silence. It was the heavy kind, the kind that presses down on you until you can feel your own heartbeat in your ears. It all started with a single sentence, a sentence I had heard my entire life, a sentence that once broke me, but this time it woke something inside me. My mother looked right at me in the middle of a crowded living room filled with her guests, and she said loud enough for the chandeliers to shake, "You are still useless. Nothing has changed." Every eye in the room turned to me. Some faces showed pity. Others showed a strange kind of excitement, as if they were waiting for a performance. And a few looked like they expected me to agree with her. Because for most of my life, that was my role, the useless one, the disappointment, the background character in my own childhood story. But that day, things were different. The carpet beneath our feet cost more than the car she used to drive me to school. The paintings on the walls were from auctions she couldn't even enter, let alone afford. The house, the massive, echoing, marble-filled mansion she was insulting me inside, was worth $100 million. And every inch of it belonged to me. Not her, me. But she didn't know that, not yet. She truly believed the world still worked the way it did years ago, where she could say whatever she wanted, tear me down in front of anyone, and walk away without consequences. A part of me, a part that had been quiet for many years, finally rose to the surface. The part that had been stepped on, humiliated, forgotten. The part that remembered every night I cried myself to sleep, wishing I could be good enough for her. I stood there, letting her words hang in the air, letting her guests shift uncomfortably, letting her smirk grow just a little too wide, as if she believed she had won yet again. But then I asked her a question that flipped the entire room upside down, a question that froze her smile where it was, like a crack spreading across ice. I looked straight at her, calm, steady, and strangely free, and I said, "If I'm useless, then why are you living in my $100 million house?" You could hear the entire room gasp. Someone dropped their drink. Her closest friend's jaw practically hit the floor. My mother blinked, confused, not angry, not embarrassed, just confused, as if I had spoken a language she hadn't heard in decades. She didn't understand how I could speak to her like that. She didn't understand how I had the strength to question her. She didn't understand that the boy she once controlled wasn't standing in front of her anymore. But before I tell you what happened after, the chaos, the lies she tried to spin, the truth that came out whether she liked it or not, you need to know something. This moment, this public confrontation, this single question that shattered everything she thought she knew about me, it didn't happen overnight. People think success changes you, but the reality is much simpler. Success doesn't change you. It exposes others. It shows who loved you, who loved controlling you, who believed in you, and who just wanted to benefit from you. And in my case, success revealed something I had been avoiding for years. My mother never wanted a son. She wanted a servant, a trophy, a backup plan for when her life fell apart. And back then, I was too young, too desperate for love to see it. But I wasn't that child anymore. That night, as the guests stared at us like they were watching a scene from a dramatic movie, I realized something important. Silence isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it's the sound of a truth about to explode. My mother's eyes narrowed, her face stiffened, her voice trembled, the first crack in her armor. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. The woman who had always spoken with sharp confidence suddenly couldn't form a full sentence. Her guests looked at her, then at me, waiting for an explanation. And I could feel the entire atmosphere shift. The power she always held over me, the invisible chains of guilt and shame, they were slipping. For the first time in my life, she needed my answer. My words, my explanation. Imagine that. The same woman who once told me I would never be anything, who called me slow, weak, unplanned, unwanted, who said I would spend my life begging her for help, was now standing in my mansion wearing jewelry I bought with money she didn't know came from me, as guests she invited waited to hear the truth from my mouth. And I could have said everything right there. I could have exposed her in front of the entire room. I could have told them about the debts she was hiding, the lies she spread about me, the real reason she came back into my life after disappearing for years. But no, not yet. Because this story doesn't begin with that moment. That moment was just the spark. The real fire, the real fuel, started decades before. Before the mansion, before the money, before the success. It began the day I realized I wasn't her son. I was her shadow, something she believed she could step on whenever she felt like it. So let's go back to where everything started, to the beginning of a story she never expected the world to hear. The story of how the useless child she insulted became the man who built a life she could only dream of. And the story that eventually I made her face the truth she tried so hard to bury. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud, it isn't messy, it isn't cruel. Sometimes revenge is nothing more than asking a simple question at the perfect moment. If I'm useless, then why are you living in my house? And that question, that little question, was only the beginning. Revenge storytelling with soft and calm voice. People often assume pain comes from strangers, but the truth is, the deepest wounds usually come from the people who should have protected us. My childhood was not a story of warm hugs, bedtime kisses, or gentle encouragement. It was more like walking through a quiet battlefield. Nothing exploded on the outside, but something shattered inside me every single day. I grew up in a small two-bedroom house where every sound echoed, but my voice somehow never did. My mother had this way of speaking that made the whole world stop to listen, except when it was me talking. To her, my voice was always too soft, too slow, too annoying, or not necessary. I learned early that silence was easier, safer, less exhausting. She wasn't always cruel in obvious ways. Sometimes her cruelty was hidden in little looks, little sighs, little comparisons that cut deeper than any scream. Like when she would say, "Look at your cousin, so smart, so strong. Why can't you be like him?" Or when she passed by my report card and snorted, "Barely average. You'll never survive in this world." Some parents notice their child is struggling and pull them closer. My mother noticed and pushed me farther away. She had a favorite phrase, one she used so often it became a soundtrack in our house. "You're useless." Not in anger, not in heat, just casually, like she was stating the weather. "You're useless. Why can't you do anything right?" "You're useless. Stop standing there." "You're useless. Don't even try." What she didn't know was that children believe the words they hear the most, and I heard that word more than my own name. The world outside wasn't much kinder. Kids can sense when something is off in your house. They can smell insecurity, fear, silence, the things you try to hide behind quiet smiles. In school, I was the lonely kid, not because I wanted to be, but because I didn't know how to exist without apologizing for taking up space. At parent-teacher meetings, other kids' parents brought lists of questions. My mother brought only one. Is he still useless? I still remember the look on my teacher's face, a mix of shock and pity, as she tried to respond politely. But pity doesn't fix anything. It doesn't follow you home. It doesn't sit beside you at night wondering why your own mother sees nothing good in you. I can still recall the day that changed everything, though it didn't look important at first. I was 8. It was the school's talent show. Kids were singing, dancing, showing magic tricks. I didn't sign up because I thought nobody would clap for me. But my classmate Daniel begged me to try. Just come on stage, he said. We're all doing it for fun. I didn't know how to explain to him that fun wasn't something I understood, not then. I went home that day and told my mother about the show. It was the first time in months I had tried to share something with her. I don't even know why. Maybe a tiny piece of me hoped she'd smile and say she'd come watch. But she didn't even look up from her phone. A talent show, she scoffed. And what talent do you have? I felt something collapse inside me, like the last brick of hope falling over. She didn't stop. Don't embarrass yourself. You'll look ridiculous. You can't even speak loudly. The next day, I told my teacher I was sick. It was easier than explaining the truth. And so, little by little, year after year, I disappeared. People talk about childhood like it's supposed to be a treasure chest of memories, warm, bright, magical. Mine felt like a room with no windows, no sunlight, just shadows. But even in that darkness, something unexpected started to grow. A kind of quiet strength, a stubborn refusal to stay broken, a voice inside me whispering, "One day, you'll get out of here." Not in a dramatic way. It wasn't some movie moment. It was small, subtle, born from exhaustion rather than confidence. I was tired of being the punching bag for someone who was supposed to lift me up. Tired of being told who I was, what I would be, what I could never become. And slowly, I realized if she would never see my worth, I would have to create it myself. But that didn't mean things got easier. When I was 12, she started kicking me out of conversations, literally. If relatives came over, she would say, "Don't mind him, he's just slow. Don't let him help, he'll mess it up. He's not good at anything." I learned to disappear into corners, into silence, into myself. One afternoon, when my aunt visited, she asked my mother why I was always so quiet. My mother laughed, actually laughed, and said, "He's quiet because he has nothing to offer." I heard that from the stairs. I swallowed it whole, and it sat inside me for years. There were moments when I questioned everything, moments when I wondered if she was right, if maybe I really was the disappointment she always said I was. But there was also another type of moment, small, almost invisible, that kept me alive. Like when I fixed a broken radio with a screwdriver and some tape, or when I figured out math problems on my own, or when I helped a teacher organize the classroom and she smiled at me like I was capable. These tiny sparks didn't change my life instantly, but they added up. They became proof, quiet, fragile proof, that I wasn't what my mother said I was. I just didn't have the space to show it. And that's the thing about growing up in a house where you're constantly torn down. You learn to survive in silence. You learn to build dreams without anyone noticing. You learn to carry ambition secretly, like a delicate thing that the world isn't allowed to touch. My childhood wasn't a tragedy. It wasn't a series of dramatic events. It was something much harder to explain. It was the slow erosion of self-worth, the kind that leaves you standing but hollow. And yet, looking back now, I realize something unbelievable. Those years, those painful years, became the foundation of everything I achieved later. Because when someone spends your entire childhood telling you you'll never succeed, you reach a point where you decide either they're right or you prove them wrong. And I chose to prove her wrong. But at the time, I didn't know how. I didn't know when. I didn't even know where to begin. All I knew was that staying in that house meant staying useless forever. So I made a quiet promise no one heard. One day I would leave. One day I would build a life she could never imagine. One day I would become someone she could no longer belittle. I didn't know it then, but that promise, that tiny spark of defiance, was the first step toward the life she would one day beg to be a part of. A life she never contributed to. A life she tried to crush before it even began. And a life that, ironically, she would later try to claim as her own. I didn't grow up with love. I grew up with lessons. And those lessons became the reason that one day, in the mansion she insulted me in, I finally asked her, "If I'm useless, then why are you living in my house?" Revenge storytelling with soft and calm voice. Leaving home wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't the kind of moment movies show. Bags thrown, doors slammed, tears running down faces. No, it was quiet. Quiet enough that no one noticed. I packed my clothes into a small backpack, took the little money I had saved from odd jobs, and walked out before sunrise, while my mother was still asleep. No goodbye, no note, no guilt, just a soft promise to myself. This is the last day someone calls me useless. But promises don't pay rent. They don't fill your stomach. They don't protect you from the world. And the world, well, it's not gentle with people who start from nothing. The first place I lived wasn't a real apartment. It was a small room above a closed-down store, peeling paint, a window that wouldn't shut, a roof that leaked when it rained. But for the first time, that tiny space felt like freedom. Nobody judged me, nobody yelled at me, nobody compared me to anyone. Still, life didn't magically get better. I worked anywhere people would hire me. Warehouse shifts, cafe tables, delivery jobs, cleaning offices at night. I'd come home at 3 a.m., collapse onto a floor mattress, and stare at the ceiling, wondering if I had made a mistake. But every time doubt tried to pull me back, I remembered her voice. "You'll fail. You can't do anything right. You'll come crawling back." That voice didn't pull me home. It pushed me forward. One day at the warehouse, my supervisor asked if anyone could fix a glitching computer. No one moved, but something inside me whispered, "Try." I stepped forward. I fixed it. Nothing impressive, but the look on his face made me feel something I hadn't in years. Capable, seen, useful. He said, "You're good at this. Ever thought about learning more?" No one had ever said I was good at anything before. That night, I bought a cracked secondhand laptop and started learning every digital skill I could find. Simple coding, basic design, website repair, software troubleshooting. I studied until sunrise, night after night. Sleep became a luxury. Meals became whatever was cheapest. But knowledge became power. When I finally felt ready, I created profiles on freelance platforms and got rejected again and again and again. Hundreds of messages, hundreds of disappointments. Every rejection echoed her old words, "You're useless." Until one night, when I whispered to myself, maybe being called useless your whole life wasn't an insult. It was training. You survived that. You can survive this. Then, my first breakthrough. $10 to fix a small website issue. You'd think it was nothing, But to me, it was everything. Someone paid me for my mind, my skill, something I taught myself. That $10 job led to more, then bigger ones. Within a year, I earned more online than from all my physical jobs combined. I quit the warehouse, I quit cleaning offices, I upgraded my equipment. I took online courses. I studied business, marketing, real estate, investing. People online called me lucky. They didn't see the nights I worked until my hands shook. They didn't see the exhaustion, the skipped meals, the rejection emails. Lucky? No. Persistent. The day I made my first $1 million, I didn't scream. I didn't celebrate. I just sat in silence and cried. Not because of the money, but because I proved something to myself. I wasn't useless. I never was. I had simply grown up in a home that refused to see value unless it came wrapped in wealth. When my business exploded after a major real estate project sold out in minutes, everything changed. I bought the mansion, not to show off, but as a symbol of the life I built with my own hands. $100 million home, 11 bedrooms, art I chose, silence I owned, freedom I earned. I moved in alone. No family, no mother, no ghosts from the past. For the first time, life felt peaceful. But peace rarely lasts. Just when I thought I was finally free, she came back, calling, smiling, pretending, with hidden intentions. But that comes later. For now, know this. I clawed my way out of nothing. I built my life from scratches and leftovers. I grew from a child called useless into a man with everything. And yet, the person who broke me most would soon walk through the doors of the mansion I built, acting as if she belonged there. Success changes many things: your lifestyle, your opportunities, your future. But the biggest change is who suddenly remembers you exist. For years after I left, my mother never called. Not on my birthdays, not during holidays, not once. And honestly, that silence was better than her words ever were. But on a quiet Wednesday morning, everything changed. My phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in years: Mom. 10 calls later, I finally answered. Her voice was warm, soft, almost loving, a voice I had never heard growing up. "My son, it's been so long. How are you?" It didn't sound like her, not the real her. "Why are you calling?" I asked. She paused, too long, then said, "I just wanted to reconnect. I miss you." Miss me? She didn't even know me. But a part of me, perhaps the wounded child inside, agreed to meet once. At a small cafe, she arrived late, hugged me too tightly, complimented me like she had practiced the lines in the mirror. Then she said the words that revealed her true reason. "I'm not doing well financially. Life has been hard. I was hoping we could help each other." Help each other, meaning I help her. That was her goal. Not love, not reconnection, survival. But I stayed calm. I listened. I didn't offer anything. Weeks later, she asked to visit my house. She walked through the mansion like it was a treasure chest meant for her, touching walls, admiring decor, claiming she always knew I'd be successful. Then she said it. "Would you mind if I stayed here for a while, just until I get back on my feet?" I should have said no, but childhood wounds whisper louder than logic. So I said yes. At first, she acted grateful, soft, polite, but by the third day, she criticized everything: the staff, the decor, the furniture. Then came the real her, sharp-tongued, demanding, entitled, and soon Insulting. Even with all this money, you're still the same. Slow, confused, not very confident. Revenge storytelling. The same woman who broke my confidence as a child tried to do it again, inside the house I built. Then she started inviting guests, pretending the mansion was hers. Yes, my home has 11 bedrooms. My son doesn't mind. He owes everything to me. Lies. All of them. But I stayed silent, watching, waiting, letting clarity replace emotion. And then, the moment that lit the fuse. She stood in front of guests and said, "He still tries, but he's slow. Useless in many things, but at least he managed to buy this house thanks to my guidance." The same word she used to crush me as a child, now used to claim credit for my success. That was the moment I realized she hadn't changed at all. She had simply upgraded her stage. But she had no idea the man standing in front of her now was not the broken boy she once controlled. People don't change without a reason, especially not people like my mother, people who thrive on control, manipulation, and narrative. Her sweetness was too forced, her compliments too sugary, her concern too fake. Something was beneath it all. One night, I walked past the living room and heard her whispering urgently on the phone. "I told you I'm handling it," she hissed. "He doesn't suspect anything. Just give me more time." She didn't know I was standing behind the door. When she noticed me, she instantly flipped into a soft smile. "Oh, I was just talking to an old friend, nothing important." But her eyes were shaking. The next day, I saw her meeting a strange man at the gate, exchanging envelopes. She didn't know security cameras captured everything. Something was wrong. That night, I checked the footage. There she was, nervous, secretive, handing out a thick envelope, receiving one in return. A sick feeling crept into my chest. I needed answers. A week later, her purse was left open on the chair, and a document with my name sticking out. An application, a legal request, a request to make her co-owner of all my assets, my mansion, my business, my investments. She planned to take everything I built through a forged family trust. She had already signed her part. She just needed my signature. My stomach turned cold. Attached were more documents, debt letters, foreclosure warnings, threats of legal action. She was drowning financially, millions owed. My father's name showed up as guarantor for her biggest loan. She wasn't here for love. She was here out of desperation. And she saw me not as a son, but her escape plan, her backup, her solution. One night, I overheard her whispering to a friend on the phone. "He still wants my approval. He always did. I just have to push the right buttons." Then she laughed. "He thinks I'm here because I love him. As long as he keeps paying, I'm safe." Safe? From her own consequences? The final line was the one that cut deepest. "He owes me. I raised him alone. The least he can do is give me part of his success." Owes? After all she did? That was the moment something inside me hardened. The child inside me didn't cry. The adult inside me woke up. And silently, I began to plan. Not revenge, but justice. Once you truly understand someone's motives, everything they do becomes clear. The sweetness, the compliments, the cries for help, the sudden interest in my life, all of it was just a cover. After seeing her papers, her debts, her attempts to take ownership of my assets, something inside me shifted. I didn't confront her. I watched her. And the more I watched, the more her real personality crawled out. She became demanding, entitled, irritated by the smallest things. She criticized the staff. She complained about the decor. She acted like she was the owner of the mansion, my mansion, and I was a guest. But the breaking point didn't come from her words. It came from her actions. One Friday evening, I came home early. My living room was filled with strangers, drinking wine from my collection, sitting on my furniture, laughing loudly. My mother was in the middle, giving them a tour. Yes, my home has 11 bedrooms. This piece cost around $80,000. He bought it with my guidance. My guidance? I stood silently, watching her brag about a life she never built. Then someone asked, "Your son must be very successful." She laughed loudly. Well, successful enough, but he's still not very smart, slow with decisions, always confused, still a bit useless, but I try to guide him. Laughter filled the room. In my own house, at my expense. Something inside me cooled, not anger, something colder, clearer. The next morning, I checked my private office, a space no one was allowed to enter. Papers were scattered, drawers open, my safe had been moved, and in my chair sat my mother. She looked up calmly. "Oh, I was just organizing. You really should give me access to all your accounts. I can help manage everything." Manage? She wanted control over everything. A few days later, my attorney called. "I received a request to add your mother as a partner in your company. It has your signature, but something seems off." She tried to forge my signature on legal papers to take ownership of my business. That was the moment something inside me snapped, quietly, cleanly. No yelling, no crying, no fear. Just resolve. But the real breaking point, the moment I knew there was no turning back, came during another gathering she hosted without my permission. She stood in front of dozens of people and said, "He wouldn't last a day without me. He owes everything to me. I built him." And the room laughed. That was it, the final straw, the end of her story and the beginning of mine. Revenge storytelling. With soft and calm. Sometimes it's a quiet decision that shifts everything. The night she claimed she built my life in my own mansion, I didn't explode, I didn't shout, I didn't fall apart. Something inside me went still, clear, calm. I didn't want to hurt her. I wanted truth. I wanted boundaries. I wanted justice. And justice requires preparation. The first step: know everything. I hired a private investigator who uncovered every detail of her financial ruin: the loans, the threats, the foreclosures, the unpaid debts. Everything. The second step: secure everything I owned. I updated legal protections, restricted financial access, changed security protocols, and locked every door she might try to open. The third step: give her rope. I allowed her to continue her performance, the lies, the bragging, the manipulation, and my home's security system recorded everything. Legally, every insult, every lie, every whisper about convincing him to sign. I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth to speak for itself. The fourth step: find a way out for her. I arranged a safe apartment she could afford if she sold her luxury items. I even planned to offer a one-time payment, a peaceful exit. But she had other plans. The fifth step: test her one last time. At a quiet lunch, I asked if anything was on her mind. Her eyes lit up. You should add my name to your properties. I raised you. I deserve something. Deserve? Then she added a threat. You wouldn't want stories going around. It's better if we work together. She still thought I was weak. That was when I knew she would never stop unless I stopped her. So I chose the day she least expected, a quiet afternoon, in the same room where she once called me useless. I laid out everything, her debts, her documents, her recordings, her attempts to forge my signature. She froze. The mask shattered. For the first time, she looked small. I wasn't angry. I was calm. I offered her the final envelope, the apartment keys, and settlement. This is the last thing I'll ever give you. After this, we part ways. You move out tomorrow. She whispered, You're abandoning me? No, I'm finally stopping you from abandoning me. She realized she had lost control. The rope she tried to use on me had wrapped around her own lies. The stage was set. Her mask had cracked. But the real storm, the real climax, was yet to come. The living room was quiet again, but this time the silence felt heavy, the kind that holds truth inside it. My mother sat gripping the envelope I had given her. Her face shifted from shock to denial to fear and finally to anger. After everything I did for you, she whispered, this is how you repay me? I breathed slowly. No, this is how I protect myself. Protect yourself from me? She snapped. Your own mother? I nodded. She laughed bitterly. You think money makes you powerful, but you're still that scared boy who needed me. No, I said. That boy is gone. Right then, her friends walked in. She instantly changed her expression. Soft, wounded, delicate. Oh, sweetheart, she said loudly. We can talk later. Don't be upset. Upset? I was calm. She walked to her friends and performed her role perfectly. He's emotional, she sighed. He forgets everything I've done. I gave him my whole life. They nodded sympathetically. Poor sensitive boy. Poor confused son. She loved that narrative. She lived inside it. But then I stepped forward. Really? I said quietly. You sacrificed everything for me? She smiled stiffly. Of course. You guided me? Always. You built my life? Yes, everything you are is because of me. The room fell silent, and then I asked the question that shattered everything she built. If I'm so useless, then why are you living in my $100 million house? The reaction was immediate. Her friends gasped. Someone dropped a purse. My mother's face drained of color. I repeated, Why are you living in my house? Her friends murmured, confused. Your house? I thought she owned it. No, I said. She doesn't own anything here. I bought it. I built this life. And she came here because she needed money, not family. My mother shook her head wildly. Don't lie. I have the documents, I said softly. Your debts, your loans, your attempts to become co-owner, your recordings. Her friends stared at her with betrayal. The mask she'd worn for years had shattered. She sank into a chair, trembling. Please stop, she whispered. Not in front of them. I wasn't hurting her. I wasn't humiliating her. I was telling the truth, the one thing she never wanted exposed. I opened the front door. Your apartment is ready. Your things are packed. A car is waiting. You're leaving today. She stood shakily. You'll regret this, she whispered. No, I replied. For the first time in my life,
I won't. She stepped outside. The door closed. Quiet. Final. And for the first time, the house felt like mine again. The house was finally silent, not with tension, but with peace. Her presence had been a shadow stretching across every room. Now that shadow was gone. For the first time, I walked through the mansion without feeling watched or judged. The sunlight felt warmer. The silence felt softer. Even the furniture seemed to breathe again. She faced her own consequences. Her debts followed her lies unraveled, her reputation cracked. Life forced her to face the truth she spent years escaping. And I wasn't angry. I wasn't happy. I was simply done. I spent the next days reflecting on everything. The insults, the manipulation, the quiet moments of pain, and my own rise. I realized how far I had come, from a boy who believed he was useless to a man who built his entire life from nothing. I learned what self-respect really means. I learned that boundaries aren't cruelty. They are survival. I learned that revenge doesn't require rage, only clarity. I learned that not everyone who calls you family deserves a place in your life. I learned that success is not about money, but freedom. The freedom to choose who stays and who leaves. And I learned that truth, spoken calmly, is the most powerful force in the world. In the days after she left, I rebuilt my routines. My peace returned, my focus sharpened. I invested in real relationships, the ones built on respect, not obligation. I laughed again, I rested again, I breathed again. And slowly, the parts of me she tried to bury came stronger than ever. Standing on the balcony of my home, looking over the city I built, I realized the final truth. No one can make you feel useless unless you allow it. No one can control your life unless you let them. No one can take your success, your peace, or your freedom unless you hand it over. And I never will again. The storm passed, the silence returned. But this time, it was my silence, my peace, my freedom, and finally, my life.